On this episode of the Mamas con Ganas podcast, I'm interviewing Lorraine Ladish, digital entrepreneur, writer, content creator. She's a powerhouse. Lorraine, I've wanted to have her on my podcast for a long time. You guys are going to love this show. We're going to talk about defying ageism and aging with peace. I think that's how I would describe it. Lorraine, welcome to the Mamas con Ganas podcast.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have wanted to bring you on, I told you, because aging is a topic that a lot of people are scared to talk about, right? There's a lot of taboos about aging. People panic when they think about aging. Even you were telling me, even young kids, teens and kids in their 20s are fearing aging. It's almost like society wants to have us in a panic about aging. But when I see you and I follow you on social media, what I see is this vibrant and joyful and like this go-getter woman that I literally aspire to be when I'm your age. So I thank you, first of all, for like doing what you do. We met a while ago I think it was at the Latina, where was it? In Los Angeles. I think that we met at a conference.
Not Hispanicized, possibly.
Hispanicized? I don't remember, but we've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
But thank you for what you do. And let's start by telling the audience a little bit about what it is that you do and how you became an influencer, because you are a big influencer and you talk a lot about aging and doing it gracefully.
So what I do now is I post content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Substack, my website, Yahoo as well. And I make a living with sponsors paying me to talk about their mission. Usually it's a mission more than a product, but I also work with products. And the way I fell into this was really when something unfortunate happened that turned out to be a blessing. I'm 60, almost 62 now, in August. And when I was 45 years old, I was already living in Florida from Spain. And in 2008, I lost absolutely everything to the recession. I've always been a writer. I've always been a communicator, a translator, interpreter. I've been a journalist. I've authored 18 books. And sometimes I forget.
Yeah, it's
but
quite a
basically, yeah, I've always been a communicator, and what's changed is the medium. So when I lost everything in 2008 and I lost my gigs with the Palm Beach Post and Baby Center and, a lot of writing gigs, I thought that I was going to have to start finding something else to do. I was actually so broke, and I left my then husband. It was a very toxic relationship. I had nothing, and I ended up on welfare at 45 and 46 with two very young kids because I was a late mom. So they were 5 and 7.
Wow.
And yeah, the thing that happened in a very short description would be that all the contacts that I made while being a journalist came back when social media started being something that was relevant, and digital publications. And I just realized that if I learned everything I needed to learn about, SEO, search engine optimization, and managing writers online instead of for an analog publication, then, or a paper publication, then that was it. And I did it. And, I haven't looked back. And the older I get, the interesting thing is that my whole life I've told my story. And when I was young, the story was about having an eating disorder. When I was older, it was about having children and being pregnant. And then it became about, being your best self as time goes by. Because one of the things that I am so happy about is that I was not someone who had success very early on in life. So I never feel that, oh, my best days are over. I feel at almost 62 that I haven't peaked yet.
That's amazing.
I have not. I don't know what peaking looks like for me, but I feel that because my entire life I was always, failing a lot at different things, but also never letting that failure or dark moment engulf me for too long. Here I
Wow.
am, and
Wow.
I've gone through a bunch of stuff like we all have, divorces, having no money, physical, mental ailments. I've struggled with depression my whole life, and nobody would tell. When I
That's
say
amazing.
I've suffered from major depressive disorder and been hospitalized at some point, it was like people are like, "What?" But you're
Wow.
always so
No, and you've done
joyful.
it. You kind of show it. It's really interesting because when I see you on social media, you're a very honest person. Like you'll show the good stuff and then you'll show the bad things. I know last year you were your house. What happened
Mhm.
to your house that you were you were showing us? That you had
So
some tree come down in your room and then you put the
yeah.
boots on the tree trunks and it made it look like the witch had like landed on your house. And I was just looking at her post going like, Lorraine's amazing. She makes even tragedy look fun and interesting.
Well, you know what happened with that? It was more of I deal with a lot of things in life with humor and dark humor at sometimes. And so, when we came back, it was Hurricane Milton. We evacuated because it's an old Florida home, and I do never want to be in here when there was a Category 5 coming straight at Sarasota where I live. And we decided to leave. And then my neighbor sent me a text saying, I have good news and bad news. And she's like, the good news that your house is still standing. And I'm like, what's the bad news? She's like, this.
Oh my God.
And sends me a picture of a tree that went through my kid's room. And there it was. And it was, but compared to, and of course we had some other damage, but compared to what a lot of people were going through, I thought, every time I leave the house for a hurricane, I think I might not find anything when we come back. But since I've lost everything a couple more times in my life before, I don't see the material things as, oh my gosh, I really need this. I mean, I understand if I had like grown up in this place or whatever, but I didn't. I've been here for 16 years, but it's still, everything to me is transient.
Yeah. Wow. Um, when I met you, you were doing a platform or you started the platform Viva 50. How did you get your idea? Because is that the first time that you actually started talking openly about your age and about aging?
No, I had already published a book in my 40s, my early 40s, that dealt with turning 40 because I saw that a lot of women were worried about that. And on the other hand, at 40, I had my second baby. I was feeling fine. I don't know. I didn't have a lot of time to brood about age really ever, except I think I'll tell you this though, my only age related um, crisis, I guess, was at
Mm-hmm.
25. 25, because I felt, oh my gosh, this is like a quarter of a century. I wanted to have kids young. So it hit me for a couple of weeks, I would say, but then that's it. I've never had one. So in my 40s, I wrote that and published that book in Spanish. And, I didn't feel bad about addressing that because I didn't feel bad about being in my 40s. But when I did Viva 50, I had just turned 50. I had recovered from my divorce, from bankruptcy, from being on welfare, from all of that. And I was remarrying the love of my life. We're still together 16 years, and I think 11 will be or has been married. And we made a blended family. We have 3 kids together, none in common. I was I felt in fabulous physical shape. I felt good mentally and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been in the Latina Hispanic mom space for a few years. And I realized I am turning 50 and, it's time to let younger moms take that space. And I want to do something of my own because I was managing somebody else's website for moms. And one day I was running, one of my hobbies, that I don't do as much now, but I was running and I thought, what can the name be? I wanted to be, combine English and Spanish, both things. And Viva 50 came to me and then I launched it because I felt back then there were not a lot of blogs or women, especially not Hispanic women, talking about getting older. and liking it. And a lot of people I knew from, editing and publishing and social media, they all said to me, why are you pigeonholing yourself? What's going to happen when you turn 60? Well, guess what? I'm 60 now. And I still, well, now I launched a Substack called Aging Like a Legend, which I think sounds better. It's like,
I love it. I love it.
it's daring and bold. And so I feel like I've outgrown a little bit Viva 50 in some ways. And, still my website, but I never kind of stay stagnant. Like the minute I start feeling, okay, this is, now my thing is not only being over 50, because being 60 is not the same as being 50. I'll tell you that in many ways. In many ways, it's much better, but it's different for sure.
Mhm.
So, I'm postmenopausal. There's menopause was hell for me. And, it's just different. It's like when you're pregnant, you want to talk about pregnancy. When you have babies, you want to talk about babies. But when all that's gone, you want to talk about something else. And so for me, it's also telling women, wow, not only am I, it's no longer menopause. It's after, now I'm headed to my 70s. And what does that look like? And as we were talking before we started recording, is I also look at older women than me, 10 years older, 15 years older, 20 years older, to see what they're doing. But I look at the ones that I aspire to be like when I'm their age. And that makes me feel really young compared to them.
Yes, that's what I was telling Lorraine, that I've always followed women online that are older than me, but not just sometimes a little bit older than me, like a lot older than me, like women even in their 90s that are like, that I see, because it makes me feel like I have something to look forward to, and it makes me joyful. And not that I don't follow anybody who's younger than me, but usually I try to follow people my age or older, just because it gives me like a place, or a place to look forward to, and something to aspire to be. And when I met you, I remember, because I was in my late 30s when I met you. You were doing Viva 50, and I remember thinking, wow, this woman is out there celebrating her 50s. And I found that honestly very revolutionary, because in the Latin American culture, normally people don't really celebrate outwardly like their age. It's like they're almost like they fear it, and it's all this, like a lot of negativity to it. So when I saw you, I was like, this is what I want to be like.
But I think it's not an age thing. Like I love following younger people online too, because I remember when you're young, and that's, at least it was true for me, it's like you don't know what you can't do. You don't know that this or that is not possible. You don't have a lot of fears. And that's how
That's
I
true.
published my first book. Like, if that's a whole other conversation, but it's like the way I did it, I don't know if I would dare do it that way now. So, and having young children, like I'm 62, as I said, almost, and my kids are, my biological kids are 21 and 24. And then I have a stepson who's 22. And watching them, like, they teach me a lot too.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
like,
My teens teach me a ton. Yes.
but it's like, watching my eldest, the 24-year-old woman, she is a firefighter. She's a ski patroller. She takes risks that are wow. Like it just, if I were to tell someone, how should I live in my 20s? Like my daughter, it's like she takes more risks than I ever did at that age. And I think there's this, okay, this is what I really think, is that people of all ages should come together, because,
Yes.
sometimes I
Absolutely.
meet with women my age and I'm like, I have nothing in common with them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And, even for business, because some of them are like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm so lost. I've lost my meaning of life. I'm like, I don't know what that means, so I cannot relate. And so sometimes I feel more comfortable with younger women who are still parenting and who still have that, the same drive to do things and the energy. And that inspires me. And, I'm also taking improv and acting classes and all these things that are new to me in my 50s. But I like, the people in our class range from 20s to 80s, and I'm in the middle. And
That's
so
amazing.
what I feel that attracts me to other people is not their age, is their energy.
Yes,
And
it's
that
the
could be,
energy.
it could be
Absolutely.
when they're young, it could be when they're old. It's the, and not even the energy as stamina. I mean, the energy of being in the world. If you're a complainer, let's look back at who I was 20 years ago and moan about that and how things have changed. I have no interest in talking about that. I
Yeah,
want to
you're
talk
right.
about lean into it. Technology is changing. Let's do this. It's like I use AI. I've learned, I edit my own videos. I film my own videos. I'm, and the reason I don't hire someone for that is because of my age and because I want to stay sharp. I could very well hand it to somebody else, but it's like, no, I want to know. I want to use the technology. I buy the cameras. I try them. I do this and that. And I feel that that is that is what keeps me, even though I talk about my age a lot online, in real life, I'm not thinking about it.
That's I think you nailed it, because if I think to myself like who I spend my time with activities, so I do ballroom dance, and I'm the
I know.
oldest. I'm the oldest one there. Like
I
I
did
dance
I
with
did
like,
ballroom in my 40s,
yes,
and I stopped in my, not that I stopped. I mean, I could still go out and dance, as you don't forget. But I'm more rusty. But it's like there's no age. I've
no,
seen
there's
people
no
perform
age.
in their 70s, 80s, and if you've danced, that's it. That energy is going to carry, like any performer, that energy is going to carry on until you're
It's
any
true.
creative person, any creative person.
But a lot of people, you're right. A lot of people, they stop doing things. And I think
Hmm.
that's why I actively look for older people to follow. But I end up, like you said, it's almost like sometimes with people my age, I sometimes don't have as much in common. And I end up like my ballroom dance partner is like 12 years younger than me.
Hmm.
But then when I go to ballroom dancing competitions, I do see, I mean, people up in their 90s that are doing
Hmm.
competitions. And it's amazing. And they say that like dance is one of those things that keeps your brain sharp and actually works to fight Alzheimer's. So, but yeah, it's really an energy thing, because my great aunt is 90 years old. I have two grandmas still alive. One is 95, the other was 104.
My grandmother died at 102, and I thought that was good.
Wow. But it's longevity, but it's all about, I think, the attitude. I think it's like the mindset. Are we going to
It
be
is.
right? It is. Are we going to be complainers, or are we going to always have something to be grateful for?
And it doesn't mean that I never complain or that things don't go wrong or that I don't have, ailments. We were talking about physical ailments, and I've had everything from fractured feet from when I was a fitness instructor in my 20s, and we did that with no shoes on concrete. From running, I've had injuries, hip injuries. I've had a slip disc. I've had my tail bone broken 5 times. I've torn my rotator cuff. That was more recent, and the recovery took me 3 years. And now I'm doing pull-ups. So it's like there's this. This is life. It's like a roller coaster. The ups and downs. Nothing lasts forever. The bad times are the good times. So I figure that when the bad times happen, not the bad times, the tough ones, the ones that make you have feelings that you are really tough and that you want to numb doing something else, when I lean into it, like my dog died 2 months ago, and I've had him for 13 years, and I
Oh,
was a little bit, raw from other things that we were handling as parents. And so my mental state wasn't wonderful and my emotional state either. So when the dog died, I had compounded grief, and I just let myself feel that and be in bed and just not, be there for the world for like 5 days, because I know myself now. And I know that I don't have to resort to numbing myself with eating or drugs or alcohol, or like I can sit with this. I'm going to survive it. I'm going to come out on the other side. But if I don't allow myself to feel, so I do have my very low moments, but then once I get through them, I'm like, whoa, okay, I just did that. What else can I do? And I
yeah.
think that's the difference.
What I hear you what I hear is like a woman who's more embodied and is more loving towards herself.
Yes.
Because when you say like I allowed myself to grieve that experience, I think a lot of us are not being careful with ourselves. Like we don't handle ourselves with care. And we sometimes want to bulldoze through things. When did you first realize that, you had to, I guess with self-love, when did you start really tapping into that?
When I decided to have children, I always wanted to have children young. I said that if I didn't have them by 25, I would not have kids. That, of course, then I had them at 37 and 40. But the issue was that I had a really horrible eating disorder. I struggled with anxiety and with mental health, with depression. My parents divorced when I was really young. It was quite traumatic. I didn't see my mother from the age of 5 to the age of 12. In the middle of all that, she had a stroke. And so I grew up without a mom. And that was that was hard. And so my teens and my 20s were extremely hard for me. And I was always looking. I bought my first self-help book at 17. It was Your Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer, and I bought it in Spanish, Tus Zonas Erróneas in Spain, which is where I grew up. And I was always looking. I knew that my brain worked differently. I knew that it wasn't not normal, but it wasn't like, I knew it was different. And I knew that I was having depression. And I knew that something was wrong with me with the eating disorders, with American magazines that I read. And, so I was very hard. And I picked partners that were to a certain extent abusive, and never physically, but, like the toxicity of relationships, men who weren't really available, and, just not. And I, started realizing that that was because I wasn't okay with myself. So in my 20s, I was searching for, how to overcome that loathing. The loathing towards myself was enormous. Like I look at pictures of myself, I thought I was ugly. I thought I wasn't good at the things I did. It was very, very, very tough, but I never stopped trying. And finally, in my 30s, when I decided, I just want to have a baby. I don't care if I have a husband or whatever. I just want to have babies. At that point, I don't care about a partner. But I met someone and I got married at 35. And by the time I said, I really want to start consciously trying for a baby, I took the utmost care of myself. And to me, that was my turning point. For a lot of women, and I know this because I've studied eating disorders very much because I wanted to overcome mine, that a lot of women are triggered by pregnancy and what childbirth and having babies does to your body. And it can actually backfire and, spiral you into a worse part of your eating disorder. For me, it was the contrary, but I want to acknowledge that it's not true for everybody. And so being the conscious mother that I wanted to be, that I didn't have, when I look back at these past 25 years or so since I started, when I conceived my eldest, that was it. I say that my kids saved me, and it's not as simple as that, but I just, I never looked at my body again with loathing or felt. And I say this with utter conviction because, I was there for both pregnancies and childbirth, and there were things that were hard and uncomfortable, and, the weight gained and the weight lost. And so this kind of allows me to see the passage of time, because yes, I have always worked out my whole life for the wrong reasons at first, because it was to be thin. It was to be, keep my eating disorder under control. And then later it was for my brain, just to forge forward during my depressive episodes. And after that, it was for my emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And throughout all of that, I also practiced yoga, and yoga became my spiritual practice more. And then working out is can encompass spirituality for sure, but it's more because when I feel physically strong, the grit and the mental discipline that it takes to be that strong just like I have the utter admiration for my body and for my brain and for my, I mean, there's not a time in my life that I have ever felt so confident about myself. And I do have my days of not being confident. But, but yeah, when I see, I don't know, the crepey skin or the hanging neck or whatever, I'm like, I'm not doing plastic surgery. That's my personal decision. But it's like, you know, the goals, setting goals, having purpose, feeling like you're worthwhile, that your voice matters, all of this helps me not give importance to my body is sagging or this is, I don't know. There's so much. I lost my best friend to cancer. I
Wow.
think 7 years ago. She will never be 60. And
Wow.
that's all she wanted. She wanted to grow up and see her kids grow up. I mean, she wanted to grow old. She wanted to grow old and see her kids grow up, and she didn't.
Yeah, it is a blessing to age. And a lot of times
Hmm.
we forget that. We forget that really the fact that we're here is such a blessing. And it's interesting going back to what you were talking about, the physical and mental challenges. Like you challenge yourself at every age. Like
Hmm.
to do I know with yoga, for example, you got your certificate what at 55 years old,
Yeah,
and you
55 for the 200. And then I kept on going to get 500 hours, and I did that at 56.
yes. And then also, like, we see you do your yoga poses. You guys have to go to Lorraine's Instagram. She has the most beautiful yoga poses. And you do these photo shoots doing these poses that you actually have to work in order to be able to do because they're very difficult and very challenging.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even though I know and that yoga is not about the poses, but Instagram is a visual place and I can tell you everything I want about, oh, I feel great or whatever, but if you see a picture of a 60 some year old woman handstanding or holding her body weight with her arms or whatever, that I think that is what reaches younger people the most.
Yes, because
And
you look so
so
strong. I mean, you're doing these poses. I'm like, what? It's
yeah,
like
and that's
amazing.
after I mean, I've lost some of my elasticity in my shoulders, but I'm like, it's fine. But I still use some of those pictures because I'm like, and even in my 50s, it was crazy to think what I was doing. And I feel that to show other people that it's possible, especially younger people, is important because maybe they don't feel it is, and they don't have enough role models of older women showing that if you want to, you can push the envelope and you can continue being strong at all levels.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite examples, I don't know if you've heard of her, but there was like 8 years ago during the Olympics, there was this ad running about the Iron Nun. Have you ever heard of the Iron Nun?
I don't think so.
So there's this nun, she's on the west coast of the United States, who became known as the Iron Nun because she started training for Ironmans at the age of 48. And at the age
Hmm.
of like, she was the oldest, I think at least the oldest female, but she was like in her 80s and still doing these marathons. So interesting because we would see her ad. Her ad was like during the Olympics, it was running. And I just remember, I still have that ad in my head because I remember looking at the ad going, is this woman for real? And then I I Googled her and she was. And it turns out that my husband was doing triathlons and she ended up being at one of them. My husband was like, yeah, I think the Iron Nun is here at this triathlon. And I literally asked her, can I take a picture with you? And I met her and I was like, you don't know how inspirational you are. It's
Wow.
really cool because you see all of these people just breaking these myths like that you can't be active. And of course, like everybody's different. There's, people who have had different injuries. And you did a marathon yourself where you had a hip injury, right? That made you switch to
Yeah.
yoga.
Yes, actually, yes. The interesting thing is that I consider my identity as an athlete, amateur athlete was running. And I knew while I was running that maybe that would be my only race. And it was. But I
Wow.
wanted to, I was like, I don't care. I just want to finish. I want to get through this. I want to get there, even if whatever happens. And so, yes, I did have an injury to my hip. And so then I went back into yoga, which I have been doing all my life. But my husband, who was a photographer, he was teaching a workshop out in, I don't know, in a retreat. And there was a yoga class at 7 a.m. And I hate getting up in the morning, but I did. I went and I was like, oh, whoa, my hip feels better. And so after a week, it was so much better that I went back to yoga. And then I was like, oh my God, this is all I'm doing now. Of course, then because I've had other injuries, I went back to strength training as well. So now I combine both. Yes. So I did switch to yoga because of that injury. But then, what I realized is that anything that you do in excess is going to possibly create an injury because you need to balance out what your body's doing. So if I have a lot of flexibility, then I'm going to lose some strength and so on. There's this imbalance. So I realized now that I do a bit of everything. So now of course I still do cardio, but I walk on the treadmill uphill. I do yoga every week. I strength train every week, and I go back to practicing my handstands and my, yoga moves. And it's not for everyone. What I think is that what's important to realize is that it's important to have goals. For me, it's important to have physical goals every decade. This decade, it was pull-ups, and I achieved them, but now I'm perfecting them. And it's not so much that it has to be a crazy goal. It has to be a goal that you feel comfortable with, or rather that you feel uncomfortable with, but that you want to reach because it would make you feel like superwoman or superman.
I like that because everything is going to depend on the person, and somebody who just had a knee surgery or hip surgery, like they're like outside their comfort zone role or goal could be just like to get up on their own and like walk. Yep. And walk. And then for somebody else, it could be a marathon. And there's so many different goals that we could set for ourselves. But I do think with physical activity at any age, as long as we have something to aspire to and we're like challenging ourselves and like giving ourselves grace, because I sometimes think we want to do things immediately, and we don't realize that when it comes to like physical activity, it's like a muscle. You have to train. Yep. And fall in love with the process, right?
Yeah, and it's hard because I've always been very type A, and I want things now, and I work through injuries and of course things I shouldn't have done. And now that I'm older, when I decided I wanted to train for a pull-up, I wasn't going for I'm going to do this in a month. I was just recovering from the rotator cuff tear that had left my upper body, very weak, and so I know I was still a little bit in pain, and I realized, well, I don't care. Maybe it takes me a year, maybe it takes me 2 years. And within 9 months, though, I got it. And that's still a long time, that's still a long time. But I think it's also important to realize that now I train for the body I'm in that day. So if I go into the gym and I feel, I have a little bit of a pull here, you have to really, really be in tune with yourself to know what's the good pain and what's the bad pain. What's the acute one that's telling me I have an injury, and what's the one that's telling me I'm sore. So and as someone who's worked out my entire life and pushed through that bad pain, it's really hard to cut back because I feel like a loser.
Yeah, well, for all of us that are like type A, we just want to go.
But now for me, the yoga is, okay, I'm going to unload the bar because today's not the day to load it up, or I'm going to have an injury. That's where I'm starting to actually enjoy the process of listening to my body and thinking, yeah, today's not the day to push myself, and today is, so that's but you still have to get to the point of even being at the gym or even doing the thing to then get in tune with your body and know how much or how little you should push yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you heard it. When it comes to fitness, we have to have a goal at any age and work out for the body that we're in today. I think that's really, really, really good advice. I kind of want to jump into like the different other categories of life that a lot of people, how I say, negatively associate with age, like romance. Let's talk a little bit about romance, because I know that you met your husband, you said at 46, right?
Yeah.
and I've seen people meet their husbands at much older ages, but what is your advice when it comes to romance? Let's say somebody is widowed, recently widowed, or they are single and got divorced, or have never gotten married. Like, what would your advice be with regards to aging and romance?
So, it's never too late. That's for sure. I married the first time at 35 and that didn't work out. And then when I was in, 45, 46, I sat down and I wrote a list of things I wanted in a partner. And I'm not saying this is magic or anything, but it probably helped me. Like if anybody that didn't meet that came in my, radar, I was like, okay, no, this person does not meet this, right? And incredibly, the guy I ended up meeting met all of those, which is crazy. I still have the list. I made a YouTube video about it. It was like, I can't believe it. Like he's bilingual, he's creative, multicultural. He had a kid. That was important to me. And he has a kid that is similar in age to mine. I mean, there was just so many things, supportive. He's loyal. He's hardworking. I mean, all the things that I didn't think of asking for before.
I love it.
My God. And so, that was 16 years ago. And that doesn't mean that we haven't gone through hard times, because also as parents of 3 kids that, a blended family, the kids got along fine, but those kids have other parents and they were also living in other environments. And so we've had to deal with the different things. And one of them, including, drug addiction with one of them. And that's been tremendously hard. But because we both know what we have. And on top of that, we work together for some things. He's a photographer. He's also a published author. But, so he can edit my work. He's the one who shoots my videos and my photos. And so it's a very synergistic relationship. But we both know that if we had met younger, we probably would not have continued together, because when I was younger, I had a more flammable personality. Like, I was quick to go up and boom, my angry, and he was the same way. And so when we talk about our previous relationships and how we dealt with certain things, we were like, whoa. So we would have been like 2 brats together. But meeting at the time that we did, of course, all this is in hindsight, we have dealt with life and even couple issues, which all couples have, in a way more mature way than we would have when we were younger. So when we think, I wish we had met younger, then we're like, nah, we're not worked out. So keep your eyes open, know what you want, know what you don't want, and work on yourself. Because until I was comfortable with me, I wasn't able to really choose the right partner, I would say, or say yes to a partner that was giving me so many red flags that I was like, it's okay. It's okay. With my ex-husband, actually, my first husband, I had forgotten that, but friends and my younger sister reminded me that, during my despedida soltera, how do you say that in English?
Bachelorette party.
Okay. During my bachelorette party, I cried saying I should not marry this person.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine? I forgot. So, but I wouldn't have the kids that I have, and I wouldn't have moved from Spain to the United States because I did that because he found a job here, and I wouldn't have met my now husband, so things work out in mysterious ways.
They do. I also, when I got divorced, I got divorced younger. I was like 29, separated, finalized my divorce at 31. I also made that list. I remember I sat down on the beach and I wrote down the list of what I wanted my future mate to have. But I remember writing it with such intensity and so much like, I wouldn't say it wasn't a desperation. It was like a knowing that that's what I was looking for. It was like, yes, this is what I want for my future mate. Now, mind you, I think when we're in that state, we don't know, is that ever going to really occur, right? We write those things like, hoping and desiring, like wishing and like knowing that that's what we want, but we don't really know that we're going to receive it. And interestingly enough, I do really believe that when we get very clear as to what we're looking for, the universe ends up actually delivering. I mean, it happened to you, it happened to me. I always tell people, you got to write down. I always tell them to do that. You got to write down what you want in the person, like get crystal clear, like the non-negotiables. You know, there's some things that are going to come and be a surprise, but like those non-negotiables, of like respect and kindness and all those things and humor. Like you got to know what you want. Otherwise, the universe will just throw things your way. I always think of that movie. I don't know if you remember that movie with Elizabeth Hurley and Brendan Fraser, where she plays the devil and he makes wishes, but he doesn't make his wishes clear. And
I
so the
can't
devil,
remember.
it's so funny. He always ends up getting the wish that he wanted, but since he's not clear with it, the devil messes with him, and it's hilarious. And I always think you have to get crystal clear on what you desire, you know. And so, well, it's the law of attraction, right?
Well, I really believe in them so much that, you know, it was like, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I made a vision board on my phone so I could see it here. And I didn't pay much attention to it. And I didn't change it, my screensaver, because I was like, well, not everything turned out. So, you know, whatever, I just left it there. And then last year at some point, I looked at everything. I'm like, what? All this happened, from revenue I wanted to places I want to visit to just a bunch of stuff. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing one for this coming year. And I've already met at least three of them. And I have it in pictures, and then I have a list. So in case I forget what the pictures mean, but it really, I think it works. And I've used this many times in my 30s. I did that for having a baby and also for publishing my first book. I made a mock cover of the book, and I had a stationary bicycle at home, and I would write it and look at the cover. And I don't think it's magic. It's more like it helps me focus on what I
Focus.
really want. And then I'm going to do like the steps I'm taking in my day. Does this add to this of wanting to publish a book or having a baby or whatever it is? And I don't want to treat
Yes.
having a baby so lightly, because I know there can be a lot of other issues.
A lot of complications. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Like, you know, IVF, I don't know, whatever we need to do to have that baby. But it's maybe it looks like adoption. I don't know. You know, it's like but it is getting clear on what you want and cutting out the noise of everything else at any age, whether
at
you're
any
20,
age.
you're 30, or you're 50 or 100. I don't
Yeah.
care.
And it's a reminder, sort of like what you're setting yourself up for. So, because if you constantly are seeing that vision board,
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly saying to yourself, oh, I promised myself I'm going to do this. So it is
Mm-hmm.
like a constant reminder, like, ooh, if I told myself I was going to do this, like, what am I doing in my life to work towards that goal? So yeah, I do
Mm-hmm.
think it's what they're very powerful. I actually teach a quantum science law of
Mm-hmm.
attraction course once in a while with my friend Lizelle Paulino. We teach it for like vision boards, because and we have had some stories actually with regards to people wanting babies, and
Mm-hmm.
that are just amazing. So before I know we've been talking for a while, but before we let you go, I wanted to ask you just a couple of quick questions, like that I was like, this is a Lorraine question. What's the biggest misconception, do you think,
About
about
aging.
aging?
Um, Gee, so many. But I think that it is that your best days are over. And I don't feel my best days are over. And of course, granted that I'm only 61. And, but here's the thing. When I was in my 20s, people would say you're fit or you're like this or like that because you're in your 20s, because you're so young. You haven't had children. When I had children, they couldn't tell me that anymore because I was still fit. I was still doing things. I was still, you know, so and now in my 60s, I still have to hear older people tell me, wait till you get to whatever age. But I've been hearing this my whole life from people older than me. But I kept reaching those ages where I'm supposed to fall apart at every level, and it's not happening. So I feel that we have way more agency over aging than we think. there are some things you cannot change. You cannot change that your body, I mean, my tendons, my skin, my brain cells, all of that is not the same, of course, than when I was even 10 years younger. But there are things I can do to counteract some of the negative effects of aging, which could be loss of muscle, loss of, your cognition can get worse, all of these things. But there are steps that I can take to keep my brain sharp, my body moving, my energy high, my outlook optimistic. And then I was reading a book. I always forget her name. I think her name is Becca Levy. I want to say it's Becca Levy. I forget if the name of the book is The Age Myth or The Aging Myth, something like that. And there have been studies done where when people have a positive outlook on aging, it can extend your life. And I would dare say, also the longevity, like the lifespan, not only lifespan, but health span, sorry. It can increase your lifespan, but possibly also your health span by 7 years. So why wouldn't I want to choose to see my life as positive instead of thinking about all the things I did in the past and that I will no longer be able to do? Like, I would suggest that a spiritual practice is really important, of any kind, or religious, whatever floats your boat, is to keep you grounded in something higher than yourself so that you can focus on your purpose again, instead of a stage in life, which is just a stage.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. I think spirituality is extremely important. And if anything, I've had a very profound spiritual year in this past year, like a spiritual awakening. I would say I would label last year as one of the best years of my life. And it was, I think, the connection with like wisdom, because one of the things that makes me less scared about aging is feeling like I've acquired wisdom and giving a much higher importance to wisdom than maybe external things. And because I feel like wisdom gives peace. So I think that's why it's so important to get in touch with our spiritual practices, like meditation. Like when you're able to quiet your mind and practice mindfulness. I did a workshop years ago. It was a self-improvement workshop called Landmark. And one of the concepts that they talked a lot about was, they called it the always already listening. And it's like the chatter that goes on in your voice, this constant chatter that you're not even knowing is running in the background. And it's all those judgments that you have placed on year by year. And was one of the very most fascinating things about that weekend was that we saw that the older people got, if they didn't really practice mindfulness, the louder that chatter was. It was almost like they were on a record, like on a repeat, disco rayado, we say, right? Like a broken record. And that chatter was very hard to get off. And sometimes that chatter, if we don't quiet our minds, that chatter can be like very negative chatter. So that those mindfulness practices and that spirituality, I think it's the best thing that we can do as we age, because that's what brings us true inner peace.
I definitely agree with that. And I, of course, have that chatter as well. But I've been able to come to a point where I hear it and I'm like, stop, that's just stop. And I can redirect it and reframe it. And so one thing that we haven't touched on, which I was thinking about, is that aging leads to death. Okay. And I know that sounds very ominous, but I think the important spirituality, this is why I thought of it, making friends with death, with the illness, with all these possibilities that are part of the living experience, I feel is what ultimately can make us be at peace with ourselves, whether we're 20 or whether we're 80. And when my grandmother died a few years ago, and my best friend died, it was all the same summer. And I bought books. I actually have a book called Making Friends with Death. And as dark as that might sound, the the consciousness of living as if you're going to die, because we are, is what helps me, think of, well, what do I want to look and feel like and embody when I'm 70, 80, or when I'm dying? When I'm dying, am I going to be regretful of all the time wasted worrying about things that didn't matter, including aging and the physical aspect of it, and so I feel that the spirituality and the awareness of death, memento mori, remember you must die. There's a book by Iris Murdoch that's very old about that. Oh no, you know what? Who wrote it? Muriel Spark. It doesn't really matter. It's not part of pop culture now. But the fact is that keeping in mind that we will die, I think, to me, is helpful to live life to the fullest.
That is so powerful, Lorraine, like that you touched on this, because I did not want to make the episode like on, how some people try to pretend that death doesn't exist, or, talk positive about aging, but it seems a little bit superficial. I don't think it's ever about ignoring our age.
I think
And
it's about fear of death, because we fear
yes,
decline. I fear decline. Of course, I fear illness, and I'm acutely aware that everything can change in a minute. And since I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, I have a lot of people that I know that were, my dad included. He's always taken very good care of himself. And suddenly at 80, he started having a bunch of problems. And cognitively, he's sharp as a whistle. He still works. We talk on the phone several times a week, and he's in very good shape, but physically he had a decline that he didn't see coming. So I am aware of that, and I want to be ready for something like that. And if we believe that there's more to everything than just our physical body, then that mental grit will get us through everything
yes,
else. So I do
yes.
look. There was a doctor called Gladys. Her Instagram is, I think, Dr. Gladys, or Gladys MD. She died recently at 100 and a lot. And she wrote how she was still living like she wasn't going to die, but she knew she would, but when she was my age, she was just getting started, so I don't know. I think it's important to, the same way that we honor birth, to honor death. And I've had a lot of
100.
loss. Mm-hmm. But
Absolutely.
it's like, learn from it and realize, what does it mean? What does it mean to experience it? So.
Absolutely. My husband loves the like stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stoicism has you think about like worst case scenarios or like death, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's really powerful, because it brings you back to what you're just saying, which is gratitude, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, that, well, you don't want to die right now, but it's coming and it could. So when you stay with those two things, remembering those two things, you're way more present, because you remember how precious the moment, like the present moment, is.
Agreed. My daughter, my eldest, she took a 20-foot drop last year hiking, and she cheated death, quite honestly.
Oh
And
my goodness.
that I have more fear of someone around me dying than me dying. So, but then you realize,
Yes.
it's like we're always surrounded by that possibility. But again, I think that would, like, I think now society, it's more about, like, there's a lot of worry about looks and all this. And I think that we talked about invisibility before. Is being invisible, I think, is partly a choice. At any age, honestly, it is. It just is. It's like, you want to be heard, make yourself heard. Don't wait for society to let you do it. And I think this is true for so many things, that in the end, how important is it to have more wrinkly skin, or say I'm 62 instead of 40? It's not important.
No. Oh, you know what I also loved when I saw your, and I think this is like important to also say, because a lot of people hide their age, is how you found it very liberating the moment you stopped hiding like your age.
Oh, I've never hidden it, but what was more important is that I make a
Talking
living
about
staying my age. That And I was telling my husband, if I can make a living full time as an influencer right now at 61, if I continue taking care of myself and even if even if I would always explore a part of it, even if I couldn't do the physical crazy stuff I do, it would be something else. So it's more about, yeah, it's interesting that when I made my age front and center, everything took off.
That's
When I
amazing.
put my age front and center, everything took off professionally.
Yeah, it's amazing because I remember growing up when I was little and like the women around me, the adult women would be like, "Oh no, 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 but you don't ask age and you don't say your age and like they're going to think that they're going to know my age." And then, as an actress, that
Mm.
age oh my gosh, it's like such a taboo subject. It's like you don't want to disclose your age because then they might put you in an age that's like, or you might not get sent out on certain auditions, that you feel like also sometimes like a certain panic of being like not being sent out on certain auditions. But you're right. I think in reality, um, like when you stop making that a thing and you just start embodying your age and accepting yourself, things get better. And you do feel a freedom because you feel like, yeah, I don't have to be hiding this from anybody.
Not at all. But also it's interesting because we think that ageism is against older people, and I don't think that's true. I've experienced ageism when I was young,
That's
and
true.
people thought I wasn't young. I wasn't old enough to be having this or that responsibility. So when I turned 30, I was so happy because I was like, I'm finally an adult. My daughter also gets it in her 20s. She is much wiser than many people much older than her. So when she tells her age, she doesn't like to say it because they think, oh, you're too young to be so, to have so much wisdom. And on the other hand, I don't get cast sometimes for some things because I didn't let my hair, I mean, I don't have white hair yet. Like I have ganas or gray hair, but it's not so much that I can just let it and it will look silver and beautiful. So, there are some things I don't get cast for because I don't look like the stereotype of my age.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, for commercials, I know
Yeah.
that once you hit like 50 something, they want you all in with gray hair, shorter hair. Like there's a very stereotypical look that they want from actresses. And yeah, it's those stereotypes can be very frustrating for like actors. But I feel like people like you right now, I think just everything is changing. Also like sexiness, like I
Mm.
never saw women who were like, how do you say? Back in the day, I really think it's your generation, Lorraine. I really do, because and like, women who are now in their early 60s and late 50s have been changing
Mm.
that story. I really do feel there's a model that I follow. She was like as one of these supermodels. Her name is Paulina something.
Of course, Poriskova, yeah.
Yes,
She was one of the top models when I was young, yeah.
I follow her too because she talks about how she's been sexy her whole life. She's been in like swimsuit editions and she was a supermodel. And as soon as she turned 50, it was like they told her, like, cover up. She's like, wait a minute. I've been wearing bathing suits my whole life. I've been wearing like even like doing yeah, just sexy photo shoots. And like, how am I supposed to all of a sudden change who I am as if I can't be a sexy woman at that age? So actually, you tell us something about sexiness and aging. I want to hear that.
So it's funny because I've done all the things. Like I tell women, younger women, do it. Like I don't care what you think you look like, wear the shorts, wear the thong, go topless. I've done it all. Um, but I don't feel the need to do it now to prove myself. Like I think, and somebody told me this about myself and I didn't understand it back in the day. They said you could wear like what you're wearing now, a pair of jeans and an oversized shirt, and you're still sexy. The guy said to me, he's like, you don't show it with cleavage or high heels or whatever like that. I wasn't that kind of person. I still am not. Um, but I think allure or, somebody being attractive or sexy or sensual or what have you comes from a way of being. It's an attitude. So when somebody walks in and you're magnetized by them, it's maybe not because they have the plungiest neckline, it's probably because there's something magnetic about their personality. And that becomes even more evident the older you get. I think beauty, like I love looking at the wild beauty of young people because it's just different. There's something there that's wild, raw. They still don't know, there's, I don't know, I love it. But
The
then when you look at
innocence too. The
the
innocence is
innocence,
what
but
like
there's
I love.
that sometimes a little bit of arrogance, but all of that, I still find it wildly attractive. But then when you look at older women, then there's this, and if that person is sure of themselves, then you're like, you're attracted to that person. And that person could be in their 80s. But it's not the same sexiness that as when you're young. And I would also dare say that we're also not used to looking at older bodies. So what you look at the most is going to become normal and you're going to like it. Like I thought I would never wear bell bottoms again. I would hate them. But then I saw them and saw them and saw them, and I saw them so much they ended up wearing them again. And I think it's the same with an older body, an older face, is that the more you look at it, the more you're going to think, wow, that's normal. That's beautiful. That's,
Yes. I think kind of like how we're seeing models that are like, the oversized models. Also,
Mhm,
I do see
mhm.
it coming in little by little, but I do see it coming in also older models, which I
I
also
agree.
find extremely, what would the word be? It's like a
Liberating.
relief. What did you say?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's, yeah, like I forget what I said, but it's like, I think like
It's like
liberating,
liberating. It's like,
like
yes,
a
like,
relief, like, woo, it's okay to whatever it is, it's okay to have sagging skin. It's okay to, and that doesn't mean I don't do beauty treatments, by the way. I also want to address that. Um, like I've done sculpture, I've done fillers, I do a little bit of, not a little bit, I do Botox 4 times a year, 3 times a year, whatever. That's my prerogative. But I have close friends and family who have had facelifts, and after seeing what they went through, I'm like, I am not doing that. Like I've never had surgeries, like major surgeries for anything. So least of all am I going to go through that for my face. But if somebody wants to do it, they should do it. It's just not my thing. And I don't know, this whole business about you have to age like this, I think is a little bit of BS. It's like we color our hair from a young age. We wear makeup because I like it. I love to dress up. I also love to dress down. I like to have a bun. I like to not have it. I love what being, I love how I am a woman. um, and I enjoy it. That's what I would say. I enjoy being a woman and I enjoy all aspects of it. But I don't think that I should tell someone else how they should be doing it.
yeah. Well, I think we're in an age right now where we're kind of just seeing a lot of people step into just doing things their own way. Like even with the
Mhm.
gray hair, like I like the fact that now you could choose to go gray or choose not to go gray, and that both things are okay. Like if you want to go gray, go gray, and if you don't want to go gray, you don't go gray. And so I feel like it's important not to judge each other for doing whatever we choose to do, or the person who wants to do their plastic surgery, let them do it. The person who chooses not to, and to take away the shame really surrounding people's decisions so that we can remain
Mhm.
autonomous and sovereign to our own selves. I think sovereignty is very important when we choose to do something for us because it resonates with us and we're not following the crowd. It is what we feel inside that we need to do for ourselves. I think, and if we do that, when we step into that embodiment, we're allowing other women also to step into their version of themselves because we're not passing
Mhm.
shame to others. We're good in our own sovereignty and our own embodiment. And once we step into that alignment, we're also okay with other people being in their own sovereign person and choosing things their own way.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I mean,
Lorraine, tell us where we can all follow you, where your websites and all of that, those goodies. Because I know a lot of women listening to this are going to be like, okay, where do I find Lorraine? How can I see the
if
amazing
you
stuff she's doing?
if you Google me, you'll find me, Lorraine Ladish or Lorraine Carbonell Ladish, which is my real last name, Carbonell. my dad's name. So yeah, that Lorraine C. Ladish everywhere, and they'll find me.
Awesome. And I'm going to put all her links in any case on my website, mamasconganaspodcast.com/236, mamasconganaspodcast.com/236. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today and for giving us all of your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you always.
And we would love to know, write on the comments, like, what is it about aging that scares you? What are you looking forward to? What myths about aging do you want to see just like go away? All of that good stuff. I would love to continue the conversation on there. Write us some comments, and I'll see you next time on the podcast, Mamacita. Gracias. Hey, it's Valentina Azara. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing to our motivational channel. If you have any questions or comments, visit our website at mamasconganaspodcast.com or follow me on social media at mamasconganas. And remember, don't be a mama con drama. Let's be mamas con ganas.